Hello, everyone. This is Ed Breniger, and Happy New Year to you. Happy 2025, and I hope it's a great year for you. I hope you find it a place and a time where you are seeing where your life is going, and you're seeing how to change things in your world of work so that you really have a sense that you're making a difference. And that's what I'm interested in helping you discover. 25 years ago, I began this idea called the Circle of Impact. And in 2018, I published this book. So a quarter of a century of living with the Circle of Impact has taught me a lot of things. I won't go into them here, but I just want you to know that my thinking about this continues to evolve. I'm not simply repeating myself. In fact, I would say since the publication of the book, I have learned more in these, what is it, 7 years, 6 years, eight to four, 6 years than I did in the previous 20. And why is that? Well, I think a lot of it is because I'm talking to you and you're talking to me. A lot of this is writing on Substack where I can write long long form essays where I have a chance to kind of dig deep into what I'm thinking and feeling and seeing and reading and coming to grips with what I'm seeing. And even more so because of what I've gained by the Eddy Network podcast. And I am so grateful for each of you have been guests. And I thank you for who you are and what you bring to the world. And I am grateful for what you are presenting to people who are watching and listening because it's making a difference that matters. And if you'd like to come back on, all you have to do is say, I'd like to come back on. I have something I'd like to talk about. What do you want to talk about? Um, and so that's good. And also, if you know someone that you think I should have on the podcast, then introduce us. That's all you have to do. It can take a minute just to get our two email addresses and say, "Hey Joe, this is my friend Ed who has the podcast. I think you ought to be on it." And I will take it from there. It's all it takes. It's very simple. The whole idea of beginning the podcast was to make it as simple as possible, make it so nobody could say no to me. And there've been very few people who've actually said no to me. So thank you for being on the podcast, and thank you all for watching it because it is making a difference because I think it's a demonstration. It's not something that's pedantic. I'm not teaching you something. I'm not trying to elevate something. I'm simply demonstrating how two people who may not even know each other at the start of the conversation can have a deep and meaningful conversation and build, actually establish some rapport that maybe links to something in the future. And this is the sort of thing that we need to be doing more of. So I thank you for doing that. And I'm serious. If you're interested in being on the podcast, email me, ed@edbreniger.com. If you're simply interested in connecting, then you need to have a reason for why you want to connect with me. And if your reason is because you want to sell me something, don't, because I'm not interested in buying. I don't need to buy anything. I'm only giving. That's all I'm doing now. I'm giving, sort of. I'm going to sell you another thing here in a second, but I'm really not interested in whether you can improve my numbers on my podcast. I'm not about the numbers. I'm about the relationship. And and at this point, I have probably 180 people who have been on the podcast, and not all of them I'm in regular contact with, but many of them I am, and I'm grateful for that. So the demonstration is how to establish relationships in this world of fast change and complexity. And we do that by listening to one another and have conversations and then saying, I know someone that you ought to know. let me introduce you. And that's the way this works. And that's going to happen through the course of this year. And just if you want to look at what's transpired, I've had kind of various thematic groups that have come through the podcast. I've had people who are business people who are entrepreneurs, people who are coaches, people who are uh, consultants. I've had people who are polymaths, people who are neurodivergent, people who are artists, musicians, painters, sculptors, architects, philosophers. I've had people who are just regular people, um, and and they all have something to contribute. Hear me. Everyone has something to contribute. The question is, how do we put ourselves in a position to make that contribution? And that's what I'm doing here on the podcast, is putting my guests in a position where they can make a contribution. And I'm not determining what that is. They get to determine that. It's really a very special thing, and I'm very grateful for it. So we're going to continue on this year. What I'd like to see, the new season will start in February, and what I'd like to see is I want to interview more millennials, more Gen Zers, and I want to start interviewing Gen Alphas. I want to interview middle school and high school students. Hear me. So if you are in relationship with a middle school or high school student and you think that they would find it okay to talk to some old man with gray hair, silver hair, who's old enough to be their grandfather, maybe even their great grandfather, but who wants to talk to them about what they're interested in, then please connect us together, because I really do want to interview the younger generations. Okay, so that's what's happening with the podcast. The other thing is that it's time now, and I've said this before. I've already written about this, talked about this, for the follow-up to Circle of Impact. This is not exhausted. The message and the meaning of this book is not exhausted. It's still valuable. It's now, after 6 years, actually generating some income for me, enough to buy coffee and maybe lunch in a few places. But it's time for the follow-up. And the follow-up is really identifying the bigger issues or the issues that kind of were suggested here, but now become much more prominent and much more in the open. So the new book will be called Unscripted Leadership, 4 questions for the future. And the questions are, what is reality? Which is a way of moving beyond the spectacle of the real to talk about what is reality, because if we engage with reality, we should find greater confidence and greater sense of understanding of why our lives matter. The second question is, who are we as people? What does it mean to be a human being? What is the value of humanity? And I think being able to take personal initiative to create impact is what that means. Thirdly, it is, what is society, or what does our relationships with one another mean? And the fourth question is, so what is it that we want for the future? I think these 4 questions are really important. And I think they all are an outgrowth of the first book, but now it will become the second book. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write all of this. I'm going to write all my research and all my writing of this book on my Substack, but I'm going to put it behind a paywall. So if you want to be a part of this, you want to comment, you want to give me thoughts, you want to help me become really clear about what I need to be saying to the world, then sign up for an annual membership is the cheapest way to do it. But sign up for an annual membership, and you'll be given the access to the stuff I'm going to be writing. So one other thing to say about this, and then I'll be done. So this book was written for regular people. This is not an academic book. It's not filled with a bunch of philosophical quotes or anything like it. It's just conversation thought, insight about leadership. And that's what unscripted leadership will be. It'll be another book like this. But I've decided that the world of thought is going through such a metamorphosis, such a transition, that I actually need to take my research and put it into print. So there'll be a companion book to this that'll come out. I don't know if it'll come out simultaneously, but it'll come out soon after I've published the follow-up to Circle of Impact, and it'll be of my research. You need to know where I'm getting this, and you need to know who is influencing me and who's influencing my thought. And if you read my Substack, you already know some of that. But I've got stacks of books I'm going to be going through over the next year and a half, and I'm going to be writing these two books in parallel because I want to make sure that what I have to say it matters to the vast majority of people, and also matters to people who are thoughtful people who are the thought leaders of the leadership in the world at large. I don't know if that's ever been done, but that's what I'm going to do, and therefore being able to be a paid subscriber to my Substack will put you into that group of people, and because you will be giving me your email, I'll be able to be in communication with that group of people regularly, because I'm going to ask you questions about what you see. I want your direction. I want your insight. I want you. So this is what 2025 is going to be. I welcome your engagement. I welcome your comments. You want to reach out to me. You want to have a conversation. If you want to do it on the podcast, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine. I'm happy to be with you, and I'm excited about what is coming. Thank you for being here on the Eddy Network podcast, and we will see you next time. Thank you for watching, and have a very great and happy New Year. Bye-bye.